1, 2, is this on?
There we were, and here we are. The inaugural WWF Armageddon pay-per-view taking place in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's the 12th of December 1999. We've got 17,000 inside the arena and an estimated 337 have bought the show on pay-per-view. Our main event tonight's going to change everything as Triple H meets Vince McMahon in a no-holds-barred match. If Vince McMahon can beat the game, then Hunter's marriage to Stephanie McMahon will be annulled. It'll be made legally invalid. If Triple H wins though, Vince has to give him a WWF title shot. There's a lot of WWF tag teams also looking a shot at the tag team titles at the Royal Rumble, and these tag teams are going to square off in our opening match to determine the number one contenders. It's a big old battle royal to kick off WWF Armageddon. This Battle Royal highlights how good the tag team division is right now in the WWF. When you compare it to last year, it's like a night and day difference. We've got the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian. These two began the match a little early, by the way. We've also got the Headbangers, the Hardys, the Acolytes, Too Cool, who get a great reaction on their way to the ring. Mark Henry and the Godfather are also here. And then there's the team that's gonna win it all.
Have you ever had sex? I haven't felt great. It felt so good when I did it with my penis. A girl let me do it. It literally just happened. Having sex can make a nice man out the meanest. Oh, hey.
So once you get sent over the top rope, both you and your teammate have to... are you being serious right now? Rodney's been eliminated? It's okay. The Main Street Posse are playing chess while we're all playing checkers. Joey Abs runs in to replace Rodders and... for God's sake. No, wait, Rodney's going back in. There's still hope for the Posse, saying his big peak gas has been on fire since this match began. Oh no, he's been sent out too. It's like, you know what? Yeah, fuck it, this pay-per-view sucks. We've got Grandmaster Sexay holding his own against Godfather and Mark Henry. The Headbangers are sent to the back after Marsh gets eliminated. The Acolytes then team up to get the world's strongest man over the top rope, and after a little more action in the ring, Christian and Scotty 2 Hotty find themselves on the apron. Unfortunately, the Grandmaster tried to help his partner, but it didn't work out too well. So Too Cool have been eliminated, and we're down to the final four teams. Edge and Christian get eliminated when Edge gets sent over the top rope and to the apron by Bubba Ray Dudley. Devon was standing on the outside, he pulled Edge out and the crowd booed when this elimination happened. Edge and Christian have been making quite the name for themselves on Raw every week, but they won't be facing the tag team champions at the Royal Rumble. Bubba delivered a great looking fisherman suplex to Jeff Hardy while Jeff was on the top rope, and the action continued in the ring with Bradshaw taking the "was up" headbutt from the Dudley Boys. The Dudleys were looking good as they dropped Jeff with a back suplex and neckbreaker combo, but Devon made the mistake of celebrating after the move. Matt eliminated Devon, so now we're down to the Hardy Boys and the Acolytes. Matt and Bradshaw tumbled out of the ring at the same time and the referees decided to let the match continue. They couldn't see whose feet touched the floor first, so the match resumed inside the ring. Matt stays outside while his brother takes a clothesline from hell back inside the ropes, but Jeff's able to eliminate Farouk after a head scissor takedown. The officials were too busy tending to Matt Hardy though, so Farouk got back inside the ropes and once again the match continued on. We see poetry in motion from the Hardy Boys, and Jeff had a golden opportunity to eliminate Bradshaw when the big Texan found himself on the apron. Somehow, Bradshaw was able to hold on following a top rope dropkick from Jeff, and the Acolytes win the match after Farouk delivers a spinebuster. Matt ends up on the apron alongside Bradshaw, and when Jeff came running in at Farouk, the Hardy Boy got launched over the top rope in spectacular fashion. The Acolytes win our opening match, and yeah, this was a great way to kick off the pay-per-view. A fun battle royal here that had an unpredictable finish. Kurt Angle wanted Steve Blackman to close the Motherfuck Dojo and join the Olympic Dojo. Blackman was open to joining a new school so he could infiltrate it from the inside and gain all their high classified confidential information, but he then noticed that Mr. Angle was only using him to gain match victories and the Olympic Dojo didn't even exist. So Sensei Blackman's going to deliver a beatdown to Kurt Angle tonight at Armageddon. Kurt says he understands he's been getting bad crowd reactions ever since he came to WWF, but he knows he'll get a great response from these fans in southern Florida tonight. He then makes his entrance and yeah, he gets booed out of the building. Great stuff. He wants to talk about his 3 eyes, but he gets interrupted by Steve. And are we looking at a babyface turn here for Sensei Blackman? Steve turned himself into an actual missile when performing a missile dropkick. He then noticed a little bug on the mat that could transform into a giant robot monster at any time, so he took it out with a top rope splash. After Kurt performed the dropkick, he too went upstairs to make sure the bug was well and truly dead. Good work, boys. Blackman performs a bow and arrow submission followed by a backbreaker. He then applies a Muda lock because real recognize real, but Angle replies with a DDT. The WWF then passed out copies of the Financial Times to fans in attendance, and naturally this leads to a boring chant. So Blackman spices things up a bit with some action on the outside, followed by a slingshot sunset flip back inside the ropes. Kurt replies with a butterfly suplex. Kurt also cannot understand why these fans are chanting boring, and seriously, neither can I. While standing in the corner, Angle admits to Blackman that the Olympic Dojo was completely fabricated and Steve gets angry. He performs a drop toe hold in the opposite corner and this gets followed up with the Blackman torpedo. Steve performs a snap suplex, he beats the crap out of Angle while the Olympic gold medalist was on the mat. Stevie then goes for a Vader bomb, but Kurt gets his knees up. Our match ends with Blackman missing an enziguri and Angle scores the win following a German suplex. But Stevie isn't done yet. For lying about the Olympic Dojo and for having no highly confidential documents that Blackman could steal, Kurt gets attacked after the bell. The crowd cheer for Stevie here and he seems to be enjoying the response he's getting. The only bad thing about Steve turning babyface though is the fact that we may never see Shane Blackman in the WWF. We'll just have to wait and see. Decent match here. The finish was a little flat and the crowd were tough to please, but still pretty decent. Michael Cole's watching Barbara Bush get her evening gown on in the backstage area. What an absolute horn dog. His eyes are laser focused on BB's big mama jammas and I can only imagine his reaction to the ending of our next match. It's an evening gown match that's taking place inside a pool of water, and our contestants include BB, Miss Kitty, Jacqueline, and Ivory. Mae Young and Evil Bitch the Fabulous Moolah are here to oversee the festivities. Nobody remembers what actually happened during the match because it's nothing more than women splashing around while trying to take each other's clothes off, but it came down to Miss Kitty and Ivory. Kitty ended up winning the match, and yes, this match actually was contested for the Women's Championship, so we have our first title change at Armageddon. The moment everyone remembers happened after the bell. Miss Kitty said everyone came here to see her get naked and she wasn't going to disappoint the fans. So she went ahead and she stripped down to her underwear before getting her bops out for the lads. This was all caught during the live feed of the pay-per-view and it caused some backlash from pay-per-view characters both domestically and globally. In particular, Sky Sports in the UK weren't too amused with the WWF not forewarning them about this planned spot, and yes, it was most definitely planned. Funnily enough, Sky didn't get the rights to a few WWF pay-per-views the following year, including the 2000 Royal Rumble. Anyway, Mae Young wants to show her stuff too, but thankfully she was quickly removed from the arena. Mae almost succeeded in her mission, which caused a lot of folks to snap back to reality after Kitty's little misdemeanor. Next up, we have the heaviest tag team match in WWF history when super heavyweights the Holly Cousins take on Rikishi and Viscera. And Rikishi said he represents all the healthy fat people in the world tonight as he goes into this tag team match. Keep in mind, this was the first time Rikishi ever spoke since coming back to the WWF, so yeah, quite the statement to make the first time you get a mic shoved in your face. He also began his promo saying "Hickory Dickory Dock," and I was fully expecting some clever and witty rhyming from Big Quiche, but alas, no such luck. He just cut his promo as normal, talking about fighting for the rights of healthy, chunky boys. Rikishi said he'd have his partner's back tonight, he needed Viscera to have his back, but unfortunately Big Vis proved to be a terrible partner. He just stood there as Rikishi went to work at the opening bell and he let Rikishi dish out all the punishment. Crash got set on, and not in a good way. Hardcore had to save his partner from taking a banzai drop. Bombastic Bob then tagged in and he ended up taking a corner ass attack followed by a belly to belly suplex. Big Quiche then looked to tag out, but Viscera was in absolutely no rush to join in. So Rikishi forcefully tagged him in, and Vis had to go to work. Bob Holly took a Samoan drop while Young Crash took a choke bomb followed by a belly to belly. Vis then missed a splash on both of his opponents, and Hardcore is able to take advantage with a missile dropkick. The Hollies then try their best to bring Vis down, but Crash made the stupid mistake of trying a sunset flip. So Vis is able to destroy both Crash and Hardcore before tagging out. We see a pop-up cutter from Rikishi. Hardcore takes a super kick. We then see the Rikishi driver to Crash. Hardcore grabs Rikishi by the hair, and Viscera then delivers a spinning wheel kick to his own partner. Was it a mistake, or did Viscera do it on purpose? It doesn't matter, because the Hollies win via pinfall, and Viscera applauds his opponents as they head back up the ramp. This leads the Rikishi squaring up to Viscera, and Big Vis takes a super kick after the two exchange words. Officials have to come down to break the two men up, and that's how it ends. Rikishi was impressive here. The pop-up diamond cutter looked good, and the fans were behind him from bell to bell. Val Venis says he's going to take a trip to Europe after he wins the European title tonight at Armageddon. He wants to find the most beautiful women in the continent because he's the Eiffel Tower and Big Ben all rolled into one. What a guy. Something tells me this Val Venis chop's overcompensating for something, but anywho, Venis has some stiff competition tonight because he's facing two opponents. The man who many thinks the greatest European champion of all time, D'Lo Brown, and the original European champion himself, the British Bulldog. Not only that, the Bulldogs brought some Mean Street backup with him tonight, so yeah, tough break, Mr. Valboski. My hopes and dreams got flushed down the toilet when that no good Teddy Long sent the posse back to the dressing room, and I legitimately shed a tear when Davey Boy didn't pull off a single chinlock in this match. D'Lo and Venis worked together to keep Davey in check, but the alliance was short-lived. D'Lo pulled off a fantastic double clothesline after he dived over the top rope, but it was Venis who took charge when the action got back inside the ring. After briefly going to the outside again, Venis finds himself in a bad spot. Davey and D'Lo decide to team up for a little while, but again, it's an alliance that's short-lived. D'Lo takes Bulldog out with a right hand, and this allows D'Lo and Venis to do a little work in the ring, but honestly, the crowd's been pretty dead for this one. Things don't improve when D'Lo botches a springboard DDT, and when Davey comes back in, the crowd remain quiet. The spots that these guys planned out just aren't getting any kind of reaction, unfortunately. D'Lo performs a top rope sunset flip, the Bulldog pulls the referee out. D'Lo then takes a double backdrop that takes him out of the match for a while, and Val Venis pulls off a spine buster. We then see the running power slam from Davey, but D'Lo puts Val's foot on the bottom rope. And when D'Lo gets back in the ring, the crowd finally make a little noise for his signature leg drop. Our match ends with D'Lo performing the lowdown on Davey, but Val follows this up with a money shot to D'Lo. This leads to Val Venis becoming the new European champion, and yeah, can't say I enjoyed this one too much. The crowd didn't get into it at all, unfortunately, and it's easy to see why. A very by-the-numbers triple threat match right here. Resident pervert Michael Cole talks to X-Pac backstage. On Sunday Night Heat, Kane wanted his match against Kid to be contested inside a steel cage, and so Pac wants to add a stipulation of his own. The Big Red Machine can only win this match via pinfall, whereas Pac can climb out of the cage if he so chooses. He also tells Tori to stop calling his hotel room at all hours of the night because she isn't getting any. I can't help but think that that's a bit of a fib, Mr. Waltman. Tori may not be getting any tonight, but X-Pac's going to get some as he takes on Kane. Not in the way X-Pac meant, of course. That's a different type of pay-per-view altogether. Kane's out first, accompanied by Tori, whereas old Billy No Mates X-Pac's all by himself. Waltman squares up to Tori on the outside while Kane's inside the cage, but the Big Red Machine climbs out to put a stop to Pac's advances with a good old-fashioned uppercut. Kane continues to wreck his opponent on the outside, but Pac grabs the ring bell and Kane gets whacked right between the eyes. Kane isn't down for long, so Pac retreats inside the cage as his opponent follows. Waltman uses his quickness to get the advantage, but he's quickly shut down when Kane catches a spinning wheel kick attempt into a big side slam. Kane stays on top with a military press slam, but when he tries to run his adversary into the cage, Pac's able to counter, and it's Kane who tastes the steel before getting dropped with a spinning heel kick. Waltman tries to escape, but Kane stops him as both men find themselves on the top rope. Kane ends up getting his wee red machine smashed on the rope before getting his head repeatedly rammed into the cage. Kane briefly goes back on offense, but his backdrop's countered into a tornado DDT, which did look pretty good. The crowd's been deathly silent throughout this one, but they perk up a little for Kane's tilt-a-whirl backbreaker. X-Pac then gets thrown into the cage before taking a big boot, and look, it would seem X-Pac has some mates as the Outlaws run down to the ring with bolt cutters. Didn't see that coming. They cut the chain off the door, eventually, and Mr. Ass slams the door into Kane's face before sliding a chair into the ring. The Outlaws take their leave as Pac scores with an X-Factor right onto that steel chair. X-Pac's mates have also thrown some handcuffs into the ring and Kane gets cuffed to the cage. This results in Waltman cracking his opponent over the head with that steel chair a few times. Pac then wants to escape, but Tori climbs through the open door to try and stop him. Unfortunately for her, she gets a loogie right in the face before taking an X-Factor, and despite this horrible act, it doesn't really get a response from the crowd. Kane kicks the chair into Pac's face despite still being handcuffed to the cage, meaning Pac has enough time to recuperate and make an attempt at climbing out. Kane's able to free himself though by breaking the handcuffs and he intercepts Waltman before his feet can touch the floor. Kid gets put back inside the cage, he gets the door slammed in his face. Kane then heads to the very top and he delivers a huge flying clothesline which finally gets the crowd on their feet. He's then able to score with a tombstone piledriver, which is enough to put Pac down for the 1, 2, 3. Kane picks up the win for himself, he gets some retribution for Tori, and yeah, this one was grand. Not the best cage match you'll ever see, but it was perfectly serviceable with a big spot at the end to top it all off. Surely this means now that this feud is over though, right? Right? For the second pay-per-view in a row, Chyna puts her Intercontinental Championship on the line against Chris Jericho. Y2J attacked Chyna's thumb with a hammer a few weeks ago, which led to no criminal charges, but that's commonplace in WWF, I guess. Then, now, and forever. Both Chyna and Miss Kitty show off their championship gold as they make their way down to the ring, but when the champion gets inside the ropes, she immediately gets jumped from behind by the challenger. Chyna's able to turn the tide with some forearm shots, a back elbow, and a kitchen sink before she avoids an oncoming Y2J in the corner. On the outside, Jericho's able to take control by dropping Chyna over the announce table before attempting to hit her with a steel chair. Kitty distracts Jericho long enough though to allow Chyna to drop kick the chair into his face, but Jericho is able to send Chyna into the ring steps. Back in the ring, Jericho goes for a top rope attack, but Chyna counters with a low blow before connecting with her handspring back elbow and a DDT for a near fall. A spinning wheel kick from Jericho leads to Chyna being tied up in the ropes, and Y2J begins to focus on the champion's injured thumb. Jericho mocks Chyna with his 1-foot pin and he scuffs his boots on her face. He then removes the turnbuckle pad and he continues his offense with a backbreaker before stretching Chyna out over his knee. Chyna gets sent into the ropes, she connects with a crossbody for a 2, but Jericho is able to regain control with a Bulldog and a scoop slam. His lion salt attempt gets countered though and the challenger takes a swinging neckbreaker. Chyna then delivers a powerbomb and, as is the case in pro wrestling, he who sets it up must take it. Chris gets catapulted into the turnbuckle that he himself exposed earlier in the match, but it only gets a 2 for the champion. Jericho's able to counter a pedigree into a backslide for a near fall of his own before placing Chyna on the second rope for a backdrop, but Chyna is able to turn in mid-air to counter the move. She didn't get the full body rotation here unfortunately, but still it was fine. Our match comes to an end when Chris locks in the walls of Jericho and after a heroic struggle, Chyna has no choice but to tap out. Y2J wins via submission and we have a new Intercontinental Champion here tonight at Armageddon. Jericho wins his first of many IC titles in a match that was, truth be told, not as good as their Survivor Series encounter. Not to say it was bad or anything, but I feel this one wasn't as heated despite all of the actions that led up to the match. After the match, Jericho tells Mitchell Cole, as he calls him, that the Intercontinental belt has been finally restored to the level it deserves, but he then gets interrupted by the previous champion. Chyna extends her hand to Jericho and she congratulates him on his victory, so I guess smashing someone's thumb with a hammer is a perfectly forgivable offense. Yet more championship gold set to be defended as the New Age Outlaws defend the tag team titles against the Rock and Sock Connection. Mankind and Road Dogg start us off and Foley takes the early advantage with a shoulder block followed by a leg drop, and then he immediately applies a chin lock. Now, we all love a good chin lock, no doubt about it, but 30 seconds into the match? Come on, man. Mr. Dog's able to fight out and make a tag to Billy, and Billy drops Mick face first into the mat for a 2. Mick then tags in the Great One, who receives his customary raucous ovation. Rocky and Billy square off, renewing their rivalry from the summer, which, as we all recall, went just swimmingly for Mr. Gunn. And the theme continues as he gets stuck in his own shirt while The Rock lays the smackdown. Foley comes back in, as does Road Dogg. Roddy goes for the Dancy Punch, but he gets stopped with a mandible claw. Billy breaks it up before he and Rock slug it out on the floor, though these two eventually get joined by Mick and Road Dogg. Mr. Ass and the People's Champ fight amongst the people as they go into the front row. Billy gets hip tossed back over the barricade and all 4 men are back around ringside. The fight eventually gets back inside the ropes where Billy takes over on The Rock, culminating in a not so great looking diamond cutter from BA. The Outlaws stay in control, taking turns at isolating Rocky, but the Roadie's attempt at a pump handle drop gets countered with a low blow. Some sick double teaming puts Rocky back on the canvas though. See lads, now is the right time to pop on a chinlock as Rocky succumbs to the deadliest hold in all of sports entertainment. It stays in for an ice age, but eventually Rocky gets out and he plants Billy with his float over DDT. Both men tag their partners in and Mankind nails both Outlaws with his running knee in the corner. He then tries his own version of the Dancy Punch, but he accidentally clocks the referee. He is able to connect with the pile driver, but there's no official to count the pinfall. Billy and Rock end up on the outside once again as Foley scores with his double arm DDT. He signals that it's time for the people of Florida, and more specifically Road Dogg, to meet Mr. Socko. The mandible claw gets applied, but then Mick's former partner Al Snow makes his way to the ring, and he clobbers Mick in the head with head. The mannequin head, not his... never mind. The referee gets revived, but he gets pulled out before he can make it to 3. Rocky then makes a beeline for Al, and Mr. Snow gets battered on the entranceway. Meanwhile, Mick gets hit with the ring bell back inside the ropes. Although he is able to kick out of the follow-up cover, the match continues on. Mick then takes a pile driver, but he's able to fight off both Outlaws before tagging Rocky back in. Rocky goes to work on the champions before connecting with a rock bottom to Mr. Ass. He makes the cover, but here comes Al Snow to break up the pin and cause a disqualification. Mick and Al then brawl up the ramp as Rocky delivers a rock bottom to Road Dogg, and Rock dishes out another rock bottom to Al Snow before hitting him with the People's Elbow. I feel like I say this every month, but this tag team match involving the Outlaws wasn't all that good. Now, fair enough, this one didn't follow the usual formula, but the main issue here was that it went on for way too long. The DQ finish didn't help matters either. Finally, after everything he's been put through, the Big Show gets his hands on the Big Boss Man in a one-on-one match. Boss Man tormented Big Show over the death of Daddy Show last month, and even though Show became the WWF champion, the Big Boss Man didn't stop. As a matter of fact, Boss Man became the #1 contender before going to Mummy Show's house, all because he found out that Big Show's actually a big, illegitimate, nasty bastard. Boss Man's words, not mine. A very personal rivalry here that's been highly entertaining simply because it's all been so deliciously absurd. And hey, it all gave Boss Man a WWF title match on pay-per-view. Boss Man says Show's fake daddy died and went to hell. The Boss Man's been running around crying saying, "Who's my daddy? Who's my daddy?" Which may have been disgusting, but it was still funny. And Boss Man wrapped up his pre-match promo by saying he'll be Big Show's daddy after he wins the WWF title. Unfortunately, this match is only 3 minutes long, meaning it's the shortest WWF pay-per-view championship match of the year. Quite simply, Paul White isn't getting the opportunity to show what he could do as WWF champion. And if you've been watching Reliving the War over the past month, you would have noticed this too. He's not even being booked like a typical WWF champion. Albert tried to help on the outside, but he got chokeslammed through a table. This bought the challenger a little bit of time, and Show got his head rammed into the ring post. Boss Man then struggled big time to get his opponent back in the ring. He went for the cover, and after kicking out, the Big Show performed a kip up. Our match then ended with a standing sidekick followed by a chokeslam, and well, at least it was different from every other WWF Championship match we've had on pay-per-view over the past few months. Not saying it was good or anything, but yeah, there you go. The build-up to our main event's like a twisted family drama. If the family was run by a power-hungry patriarch who only found his moral compass when it was convenient to do so. Triple H, being the cerebral assassin he is, slipped a little something in Stephanie McMahon's drink and he got married to Vince's daughter in Las Vegas while Steph was knocked out unconscious. Vince naturally lost his mind because, sure, Vince might exploit his family for ratings every now and then, but unlawfully marrying his daughter, that crossed his very flexible line. Instead of doing the sensible thing, like calling the cops and having Triple H locked up, Vince decided that the most logical way to deal with his daughter's drugged up wedding in Vegas was to try and annul it inside a wrestling ring live on pay-per-view. If Vince wins, Triple H signs the papers and the marriage is over. If Triple H wins, not only does he become the #1 contender for the Big Show's WWF title, but there's a lot more at play here. A win means Hunter gets an official seat at an unwelcome McMahon family dinner table, permanently, giving him a very strategic position as we roll into the year 2000, even if Vince and Stephanie want nothing to do with him. Stephanie McMahon's here tonight. She takes her front row seat to see what could be a game changer. Hunter's brought a sledgehammer to Armageddon tonight, but Vince has brought something way more useful, a handful of Shawn Michaels' finest disco dust. Triple H has been blinded, and no, Vince didn't miss by a mile at all. It's time for our main event, Triple H vs Vince McMahon at Armageddon 99. Vince begins the match by throwing rights and lefts at his opponent. Triple H is acting blinded and therefore McMahon's able to get in a few free shots. They don't look pretty at all, to be honest. He does perform a clothesline and he gets dirty with a low blow, but hey, no holds barred, anything goes. The destruction of Triple H continues with a bump at the commentary table followed by a bump at the ring steps, and here we go, we're going into the audience. You just know we'll eventually make it up the entranceway too, because it wouldn't be a 1999 WWF pay-per-view match without the same old tired stuff. These spots have become such blatant shortcuts that they really have to be called out. Hunter turns it around when the two fight in a dark arena tunnel. Would be great if we could actually see what's happening. Triple H stays in control as the two make their way back to the front row, though Vince manages to backdrop Hunter over the security barrier. Mankind then shows up with a shopping cart filled with wonderful toys, so Vince takes the most lethal weapon of all, a trash can lid. And the shot he tries to give Hunter looked pretty bad. I'm not sure who took the impact here, but it's Vince who goes down. Triple H gets the last of Shawn's amazing powder out of his eyes, and this little break gives Vince another swing with the trash can lid. Hunter takes a few more shots as Stephanie watches on with a gleeful look on her face. The guy beside her, though, is absolutely stoned out of his mind. Vince then uses the whole trash can to knock Hunter back over the barrier. Stephanie talks a little trash to her husband as Vince goes looking for more weapons. This time he grabs a crutch, but the game goes back in control and that crutch gets lodged right into Vince's nutsack. Vince gets thrown into the shopping cart and his bump looked quite comical. And the two then trade weapon shots as they, you guessed it, begin making their way up to the entrance stage. Triple H stays firmly in the driver's seat here as he uses the entrance props to his advantage, but the best shot he gives McMahon is when he uses the shopping cart to great effect. That looked pretty awesome and funny. Just when you think these two are heading back to the ring, they stop in their tracks and they head back up the ramp. There's more toys to play with up there, and by God, these men are gonna play. Another comical bump happens when Hunter swings a turret around and it bumps Vince right on the dome. Even Stephanie thought it was funny, and look, she's covering her face so she doesn't laugh all over her half-baked neighbour. Hunter then rubs some broken glass into McMahon's forehead, but Vince comes back by throwing Triple H into an airplane prop before performing a little aircraft adjustment. Hunter gets hit on the head, and I don't know why, but I'm finding all this really funny. Honestly, stopping myself from adding in cartoon sound effects. We go to the side of the entranceway very briefly before the two head into the backstage area. Things are now getting interesting, but the heat's going to get seriously turned up as we approach the end of our main event. Hunter drops an elbow on Vince while the two were on top of a car. Hunter then disappears and Vince has no idea where his opponent went. Stephanie watches on from the crowd as her dad goes hunting for her husband, and McMahon's now left the arena as he continues his search. A car then tries to run Vince over, but the cat-like chairman of the board dodges the vehicle. It was Triple H who tried to run Vince down, and this plays into what happened to Steve Austin at Survivor Series. The two then walk around the parking area where Triple H uses cars and an 18-wheeler to do more damage to his dad-in-law, and the game even body slams Vince on top of a limo. Hunter taunts Vince as the two head back inside the arena. On the way there, Hunter asks McMahon if he wants a snack from the vending machine, but Vince says no. McMahon's truly had his ass handed to him here, but the old devil isn't out yet. When the two get back in the arena, he uses a steel pipe to keep his opponent at bay for a while, and this leads to Triple H climbing up the side of the entranceway. Hunter goes up the scaffold and Vince follows close by. Unfortunately for McMahon, it's Triple H who manages to keep his grip, and Vince goes down into a bunker prop set up at the entranceway. McMahon's been busted open, and to make sure Vince is done for, the game smacks him with an empty gas can. Triple H has this all under control, so he goes back to ringside. He grabs a microphone and he taunts Stephanie. He says Stephanie will never have to wonder who her daddy is again because he's standing right in front of her at this very moment. Hunter then gives Stephanie one last chance to say goodbye to Vince before he puts McMahon away for good. Great bit of work here and a great way to build anticipation. Hunter puts Vince in the ring. He lifts a steel pipe above his head. Vince defiantly flips Hunter off, and so Triple H decides to use his sledgehammer instead. Hunter grabs his weapon of choice as Stephanie screams from her front row seat, but just as Triple H is about to deliver the kill shot, Vince gets in a low blow. This buys Vince enough time to hit Hunter with that steel pipe, and now it's Triple H who's in trouble. McMahon decides to pick up the game sledgehammer. Hunter's just about to meet his maker, but Stephanie McMahon gets in the ring and she stops her dad from hitting his opponent. Instead, Stephanie wants to do the honors, and it's she who wants to put an end to Triple H for good. But in the end, she just couldn't do it. She just doesn't have it in her. So Triple H takes the weapon, he whacks Vince in the gut and right in the face. Triple H wins via pinfall, and that's it. He's going to stay married to Stephanie McMahon, and he's just become the #1 contender for the WWF title. After the bell, Stephanie tends to her dad. She looks very worried about the state Vince is currently in, but Hunter goes to brain her too just before the pay-per-view comes to an end. Stephanie turns her head around, she looks a bit shocked at what Triple H was about to do, but then she gives Hunter a big old smile before embracing him in the middle of the ring. It was all a setup. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon had worked together to pull this whole thing off. These two are madly in love, it seems, and Triple H just played the perfect game. A brilliant ending to the pay-per-view right here, and even though the main event was formulaic in places, it was still pretty entertaining. The big reveal at the end is truly a historic moment, and it launches the final chapter of the WWF's Attitude Era. The rest of the show was a mixed bag, though I did enjoy it more than Survivor Series. The Battle Royal opener, X-Pac vs Kane and Chyna vs Jericho are all worth a watch, and the main event, I feel, is a must-see Attitude Era showdown that changes everything as we move forward. Armageddon does come recommended. Check it out if you haven't seen it in a while. And please join me on Thursday for Reliving the War. This McMahon-Helmsley relationship is soon going to affect every single person who works for the WWF. Thank you very, very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And please take care.
Running